Hi, good evening. It is Sunday, March 6th, and I am doing real talk on emotional eating. Tonight's topic, I'm going to review with you what is emotional eating, how to identify if you are an emotional eater, what is emotional hunger versus physical hunger, what are the causes and triggers, and tips and strategies on how to either reduce or get rid of emotional eating. And then I'll describe there are three eating disorders that exist that are considered a mental health disorder. So, what is emotional eating? For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kaisha Velasquez. I'm a licensed therapist. And I do these talks every Sunday just to bring awareness and education around different issues depending on what month it is. And March is Stress Awareness Month and Nutrition Awareness Month. So I'm going to be focusing on those areas, and Women's History Month. So emotional eating is a way that people find comfort, the way they relieve stress, the way they reward themselves. Normally it is junk food or other comfort foods. And basically it's a coping mechanism, emotional eating. Either you eat if you're anxious or you eat if you're depressed, or if you're overwhelmed. So it's a way to make yourself feel better, basically, to fulfill some type of emotional need. So it's not really physical, it's more mental. So are you an emotional eater? Well, there are several things that would determine that. There are a few questions that you would ask yourself. One is, do you eat more when you're feeling stressed? Or do you eat when you're not hungry or when you're full, but you just feel the need to eat? There's also something called oral fixation, that if people have this, they have to have something in their mouth all the time, like chewing gum or hard candy would be better suggestion. Do you eat to feel better, to calm and soothe yourself when you're sad, mad, bored, anxious, etc.? Do you reward yourself with food? Now, that could be a positive tip and strategy to use, reward yourself with food. It really depends. Do you regularly eat until you've stuffed yourself? Does food make you feel safe? Do you feel like food is a friend? Do you feel powerless or out of control around food? So that is specific questions that could help you determine whether or not you're an emotional eater. The emotional eating cycle is something happens that upsets you, then you feel an overwhelming urge to eat. You eat more than you know you should, and then you feel guilty and powerless over food. And then it goes back to something happens that upsets you. It could be because you feel powerless and guilty over eating too much, then that can upset you, and you go back through the cycle again of emotional eating. So there is emotional hunger versus physical hunger. Now, this is very interesting. You have to know the difference. And also, in order for you to know if you're an emotional eater, you have to know the difference between emotional hunger and physical hunger. So obviously, it's not as simple as it sounds. I mean, the physical hunger, obviously, your stomach growls, you haven't eaten. You could just know logically that you're physically hungry because you didn't eat in 8 hours. But emotional hunger can be very powerful and can pull you in specific directions. So there are 6 different things. Emotional hunger comes on all of a sudden, in an instant, and it feels overwhelming and it feels urgent. It feels like you have to eat. Emotional hunger craves specific comfort foods like chips or ice cream, cookies, burgers. Emotional hunger often leads to mindless eating, like you're just eating. You're not even paying attention to if you're full or not. You just keep eating because it's there. You ever notice you're at a family get together and then you're just eating chips and just eating and snacking? But hi, Crystal. So pay attention to that. Another is emotional hunger isn't satisfied once you're full. Like, even if you're full, you will continue to eat, because remember, with emotional hunger, you're actually eating to satisfy some type of emotion that you're dealing with. Anxiety, depression, exhaustion, frustration. Emotional hunger isn't located in the stomach at all. It is in our head. And you're focused more on textures, tastes, and smells. That's why we have specific cravings. We have a specific craving to eat salt, a specific craving to eat sugar or grease, something fried. That's emotional hunger. Unless you're pregnant, that's a whole different story, because we definitely get cravings too when you're pregnant. Then emotional hunger often leads to regret, guilt, or shame. After you eat, you feel really overwhelmed, and those type of things lead to one of the eating disorders, which I'll talk about in a moment. So you have binge eating disorder, bulimia disorder, and anorexia disorder. So, which I will discuss in a moment what those things are. So the difference between emotional hunger versus physical hunger. To break it down even simpler, emotional hunger, I mentioned already, comes suddenly. Physical hunger comes on gradually. Like, I think I'm a little bit hungry. I haven't eaten since breakfast. Let me grab something to eat. That's physical hunger. Emotional hunger feels like it needs to be satisfied instantly. Physical hunger can wait. Like if you're going to on a dinner date and you decide to skip lunch, you may be hungry, but you can actually wait until the dinner date. Emotional hunger, you would not be able to wait. Emotional hunger craves specific comfort foods, while physical hunger is open to all options. Lots of things sounds good, and it's okay if you eat a salad versus guacamole with chips. Emotional hunger isn't satisfied with a full stomach. Physical hunger is satisfied with a full stomach, so you actually stop when you're full. Emotional eating triggers feelings of guilt, powerlessness, and shame. Eating to satisfy physical hunger doesn't make you feel bad about yourself at all. So it's interesting, because isn't that ironic that when you are emotionally eating because of emotional hunger, because you have a desire to fulfill some type of emotional need, so you eat to try to fulfill your emotional need, and then that makes you feel guilty and more emotional. So instead of removing some of your emotional issues like anxiety or depression, you actually end up adding more emotional issues when you eat emotionally. Okay. So what triggers emotional eating? Well, there are actually 12 triggers. There are more, but these are the top 12 triggers, okay? The first is food is used as a main source of pleasure. So you actually you eat because you want to feel euphoric. You want to be happy. You want to feel good about yourself. You had a bad day and you just want to feel good, and it brings pleasure. So you sit there and you're like, I think I get like that with coffee. Truthfully, coffee definitely makes me happy. So it's usually to feel pleasure and the positive feelings that come with that. When you emotionally eat, this is usually based off of two motivations: feeling good and avoiding pain, basically. Okay. The second trigger or cause is a lack of other options for dealing with discomfort. When we feel bad, we look for other ways to feel better. And if we don't have any ways to feel better, we may choose emotional eating as a coping mechanism. Number 3, you have a low threshold for discomfort. Like, you don't like being unhappy and uncomfortable. So you would not be able to reduce your eating. Instead, your anxiety increases and you desire to eat more. The fourth is a lack of self-esteem. So eating emotionally because of a lack of self-esteem. is usually you're not happy with yourself, so you're trying to soothe yourself with food. The fifth one is stress. That's as simple as it gets. You're stressed out, so you want to eat to make yourself feel better. The sixth is a lack of awareness during eating. So it's easier to overeat because you're not paying attention, so you're continuously eating because your attention is on friends or TV or conversation that the family's having or something, so you're not paying attention. That's another cause of emotional eating. Number 7, body dysmorphia. You hate your body and you feel body shame and so you end up emotionally eating to try to make yourself feel better and distract yourself from your body. But in turn, it actually causes more body dysmorphia. Number 8, feelings you can't handle. So if something happens and you just can't handle it, you found out your partner cheated on you, or you found out that the promotion you were supposed to get at work, you're not getting it. They gave it to somebody else who was not as deserving. Those overwhelming feelings, you can't handle it. So instead you turn to emotional eating. The 9th is your body's physiology. So if you let yourself get too tired or too hungry, you end up, your brain sends a message saying it's time to eat. It's kind of, it tricks you. And so that one is harder to actually manage and identify. What I would say to you is that there's not a lot of people who actually deal with that. Your body physiology being the cause. All right. Number 10, boredom or feelings of emptiness is another cause. So like you don't have nothing better to do. So you sit there, you're watching TV and you're just snacking. Sometimes I do that. I mean, the trick is to make sure you have something healthy you're snacking on so it doesn't make you feel worse. Number 11, childhood habits. So, if you created that behavior of emotional eating when you were a child, it's more likely as an adult, you're going to use that as another coping mechanism. Like anytime you did something good when you were a child, if your parents rewarded you for good behavior with ice cream and take you out for pizza, if you had a good report card, you may do that for yourself because it's learned behavior. Number 12, social influences, peer pressure. So you don't want to eat. Let's say you go to a restaurant and you really don't want to eat, but because your friends are pressuring you, then you end up eating. And that's emotional eating, not an emotional hunger, not physical hunger. Okay. So what can you do? These are the tips. Ready? There are 5 ways you can reduce emotional eating. So there's reducing emotional eating, and then there's getting rid of emotional eating altogether or avoiding it. So 5 tips to reduce emotional eating. 4 tips, sorry. I don't know, I see number 5 that's not there. I think I need new glasses, guys. So the first, identify your personal triggers. What feelings or emotions are causing you to think about food and wanting to eat? That's the first. The second, find other ways to fill the tank and take care of yourself. So basically replace the feeling to eat with something else. Number 3, take 5. So what that means, don't tell yourself you can't have the cookie. Take 5 minutes as a pause before you go and have the cookie. That way you don't eat the whole bag of cookies. You may have 1 cookie. All right. Number 4, check up from the neck up. That means reflect. Take a moment, reflect on how are you feeling, what's really going on, and accept that sometimes you're going to have bad feelings and there are other options that you can use than eating. Okay. So those are 4 tips to reduce emotional eating. Now I have 14 tips to overcome emotional eating. 14. And I'm going to go through them really quick. And again, if anybody ever wants to ask me more questions, you can inbox me questions here on TikTok, or I do have a Instagram page and a Facebook page. They're both called KV Training and Consultation. And I do have a website too, kvtrainingandconsultation.com. So tips for overeating. Number 1, use the power of self-talk. So use self-talk. What is self-talk? It's just identifying statements, things you can say to yourself when you start having these feelings, these emotional feelings to want to eat. So like if you're emotional, you're anxious, you're depressed, and you're having that urge to eat, instead, you would use that positive statement you created to talk yourself out of eating. Number 2, rate your hunger from 1 to 10. 10 meaning you're starving. 1 meaning you're not hungry at all. And the goal is this: if you rate it 1 to 10, how hungry you are, anything 5 or less, anything less than 5, do not eat. Or if you do, eat something like a snack, a healthy snack, like an apple. I know everybody always goes to the apple. An apple or carrots or celery or a small little salad. Make yourself a salad with lettuce, tomato. It doesn't have to be a fancy salad, just something to snack on. Number 3, again, you would find an alternative, something that you can replace eating with. Like it could be anything, like go for a walk, read a book, take a bath, listen to some music. Music always helps. If you want to sing and dance around your house, you could do that too. Number 4, the 3-bite rule. Use the 3-bite rule. The 3-bite rule is basically you get pleasure from certain foods. They're your comfort foods that make you feel better. But instead of eating the whole thing, just have 3 bites, and not huge bites. Just 3 regular bites, okay? And then you should be satisfied there. Number 5, practice good dental hygiene. Meaning, have peppermint candies or breath mint or gum or something, because that could replace the urge to eat. Number 6, progress, not perfection. So don't be so hard on yourself. If you're an emotional eater, and remember, I started with ways to reduce first, because you can't automatically just stop doing something, especially if it's been your coping mechanism since you were a child. You can't just stop. That's like cold turkey, and it's not realistic. You may end up going back to it later. So progress, not perfection. So give yourself credit and give yourself a pat on the back, even if it's a small win that you reduced your emotional eating a little bit, okay? Number 7, this one is really, really good and very helpful. Keep an emotional eating diary. So kind of journal what you're eating. And that way you end up, through writing it down, you can reduce the amount of time. So instead of eating 7 days emotionally, maybe you set a goal to eat 5 days only, or 3 days, or every other day, or less amount of food. So remember, it's about reducing, so then you eventually don't rely on emotional eating as a way to manage your anxiety, depression. Number 8, pause when you have cravings. Like take a moment, take a walk, throw cold water in your face, count to 5. You can time yourself on the break. And then by the time that's over, you won't have the same urge. The urge would have reduced. Number 9, learn to accept your feelings, even the bad ones. So you got to sit there and say, okay, you know what? Excuse me. Today's a bad day, but you know what? I'm going to get over this. I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to sing. I'm going to call a friend. That's another thing you can do. Number 10, indulge without overeating by savoring your food. So portion control, basically, that's what that means. So make sure that you don't fill your whole plate up with all this food. Instead, portion control it. Number 11, make daily exercise a priority. Exercising is not just to lose weight or gain weight. It's also to get rid of negative emotions and feelings. I always tell my patients, if you're feeling anxious, you might want to or angry, you might want to do exercise that's like cardio, high intensity, something that can remove and get rid of your negative energy. If you're feeling depressed, you might want to do something that's more upbeat, dance, cardio, or if your anxiety is so bad that you can't stay still, you might want to do meditation or yoga. So exercising is good for your emotions too. Number 12, try to set a goal to sleep 8 hours every night. Because believe it or not, we are, as human beings, we are more emotional when we don't get enough sleep. So that's another tip. Number 13, make time for relaxation. So give yourself breaks. Like at least every day you should have like a 30-minute break where you're not doing anything, that you're just sitting, you're kind of breaking up your day. If you worked all day, before you cook dinner, before you help your kids with homework or your partner, you sit and do a movie night or run errands for your family. You have to take time for yourself to relax and not have to feel the heavy weight of having to run and take care of responsibilities. Because the reality is you are responsible for your own physical health, but mental health too. Number 14 is connect with others. So lean on your support system. You should have a support system. If you don't know who your support system is, you need to evaluate the people in your life, both friends and family, and identify what role they play in your life and how they can help you. And what I mean by helping you or leaning on them or connecting with others does not mean you have to call them and tell them, oh, I'm so anxious, I'm so depressed. You don't have to tell them what you're feeling. You can use them as a healthy distraction. Find out what they have going on. That alone will kind of disrupt your thoughts and help you not stay in your negative emotions. And lastly, I wanted to review with you the 3 different eating disorders. I said, so it's anorexia, bulimia, and binge eating. So what is the difference? Well, there is the categories of weight, eating habits, body image, physical symptoms, emotional symptoms, and relationships. So weight, anorexia is significant underweight. People are underweight. Their BMI is less than 17.5. Whereas bulimia, it varies. It could be normal weight to overweight. And then binge eating is usually overweight people that binge eat. Eating habits. Anorexia, take in few calories, may eat only a limited variety of foods, and may have odd food rituals. Like somebody could eat celery every night for dinner as an example of limiting what they eat. They only eat certain things. And the same thing over and over. Bulimia, the person binge eats large amounts of food in a short time period, then purges by vomiting and or abusing laxatives. Binge eating, on the other hand, binges by eating large amounts of food in a short period of time and may restrict food in between binges. But there's no purging. That's the difference between binge eating and bulimia. Body image. Anorexia, believes she is fat even when she is really underweight, obsessed with weight and appearance. And bulimia, obsessed with weight and appearance. And then binge eating may be overly focused on weight and appearance. In regards to relationships, all 3 actually become very withdrawn. They're individuals who may refuse to eat in front of others, may be overly sensitive when it comes to food or discussions of food. So you may want to pay attention if these describe you or any friend or family, and if you know somebody that is dealing with anorexia, bulimia, or binge eating, they should really, really, really reach out to a professional to get some help, either a therapist or even their primary care doctor, just so they can speak to somebody, because it is really, it can take a toll. It starts off with what people don't realize is the eating disorder, even though it affects you physically, it begins here in the mind. So there is one treatment program that's been amazing and continues to be amazing. It's called Walden, and it's an eating disorder treatment program. And it's been very helpful to a lot of people that I've seen that needed help. because the emotions are depression, anxiety. Some may have obsessive compulsive behaviors. They're in denial that there's a problem. Anorexia, people with anorexia definitely deny there's a problem. Whereas bulimia, they're just self-destructive. They just avoid the conversation altogether and they try to hide when they're doing it. And this binge eating is really feelings of guilt or self-hatred. So, but the purpose of me talking today about emotional eating is because I want to make sure that you know that there is help. There's ways to get rid of and overcome it. And if you're an emotional eater, if you can learn to manage it, it will not become one of the 3 disorders. So that's the difference too. Well, I hope this was helpful for you, and hopefully you could tune in next Sunday at 7 o'clock for the next talk. If not, tomorrow, Monday, 8 a.m. Eastern time, I will be doing my Coffee with a Message. Have a great night. Bye, everyone.